Welcome everyone to Writers Need Help. This week we're talking all about funny / embarrassing writing moments. So hope you're ready. And I hope you'll join in with us in the comments and share some of your funny writing moments as well. But first of all, let's check in with everyone. Scarlett, what about you? It looks like you might be signing something right now.
I have been signing tip-in pages for a while today, and so my hand hurts a lot, but there I have 6,400 signatures to
Wow, that's gonna
put
be
on these tip-in pages, but they're beautiful, and yeah, so I did that, and I've actually been busy all day because I'm also working on a special project for my readers. And it just requires a lot of hand things. And so I have a feeling that tomorrow I'm going to really regret this. So.
Oh yeah, I got to do those hand stretches. I'm always constantly, stretching the hands. But well, that's exciting though. 6,400. Wow. Eventually you're gonna want to get a stamp or something.
I remember thinking, oh, that's not that much, and then I got them in the mail, and I was like, never mind.
Yeah,
take it back.
Wow.
Was that all for like pre-ordered stuff?
That was for the Bookish Box. So
wow.
It's really, really cool. But also very heavy boxes and a ton. I worked on it for I don't know how long I worked on it, but my lower back started to hurt and my wrist started to hurt, and I was like, gosh, this is taxing.
Yeah, that would be a lot. Alysha, what about you? What's been going on?
I finally started drafting the draft 2. So I'm back to writing every day.
Yes. Yay. That's so exciting. I'm also writing every day. I've been trying to do a chapter a day, so it's been working out really well. But unlike some people, I don't have 80 chapters planned.
This is a for sure adult fantasy. It is a thick boy, and I'm excited.
How many words is that? How many words is your 80 chapters?
I think it's going to come out to somewhere between like 150,000 to 160.
Yeah. It's a really long book to track.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have outlined it to the T. So I know every chapter. I'm excited. I've read a couple adult fantasies this year, and I actually like Googled the word count of them. And they're both over 170,000. So I was like, all right, then I'm fine.
What did you read?
The first was Nevernight. It was a reread because that whole trilogy is out. And then the one I just finished was The Bone Shard Daughter, which is the first in a trilogy. And it came out either late last year or early this year. It was really good.
I will have to.
That one had a lot of narrators. There were like four different narrators, so that was fun.
Yeah, that can really up your length too. The more POV characters you have, so
because they all have their own arcs. So and the start of a trilogy, so there was a lot of setup and world building, which is what I love.
Awesome. That's exciting. Well, that's me. I've just been writing all about a chapter a day, sometimes more if it's like a really short chapter, and working on all the things. So
all the things.
But yes, so we are talking about embarrassing stories today. Speaking of, I feel an echo of myself right now, so you might want to mute yourselves if we start hearing echoes. It went away. I actually wrote down a bunch, but were you all able to come up with some funny writing stories?
I have at least one that's like more embarrassing. Like I think it's more embarrassing to me than anybody. So.
Well, spill those beans. Let's hear it.
Okay. So like the very first book that I queried, which will never see the light of day, thank God. But I had sent it out to, I basically only use Twitter to find agents, which isn't a good thing to begin with. And I had found this one agent that was like in Oklahoma, actually. And so I sent it to her, and she was really nice and like requested the full. And then she, a couple months later, responded that she was going on maternity leave, but that she would keep reading. And at that point, I had like written another book. And so I responded to her, thanks for your interest, but I think I'll have better luck with my next book. Bye. And now that I look back, at the time, I thought I was being like really professional and like withdrawing my manuscript. But now I realize like I basically told her that what I sent her was garbage, that I had wanted her to read before, but now I didn't care. So now I'm like, oh, that's embarrassing. She's still an agent, so.
I mean, I can see like, because especially early on, right? You feel like you grow so much with each manuscript. So I can imagine like having sent something out and then being like, yeah, maybe the new one is better.
The new one's always better, but I don't think you tell anybody that.
Right. Yeah, just waiting. Sometimes waiting is really hard. Like I'll do that too when I could have just waited, but I'll send like an email. Something like, oh man, I should have just waited. Yeah, that's really easy to do though. So not too embarrassing.
Not too embarrassing. I do have like a fangirling.
Yeah.
That's not writing. That's just being a fangirl.
Well, still, that's in the realm.
So, and this isn't that long ago. Like I was in my late 20s. I went to the Austin Teen Book Festival. Drove all the way down there. That's like what, like a 7-hour drive from where we are, 8 hours maybe. Went down there and like I walk into the double doors like an hour early because one, I was driving from here, and then two, I like to be early to get the best seat. And I walk into the doors and like coming like towards me is Sarah Dessen. And I like step into her path. We're the only two people around, but I stepped directly in front of her, which in hindsight was probably really jarring for her. I stepped like into her path and I just go, "You're Sarah Dessen." And she was so sweet. She like laughed and she was like, "I am Sarah Dessen." And I was like trying not to cry at this point. I was like, "Can I take a picture with you?" And she took a picture with me. And then like an hour later, I did a similar thing to Maggie Stiefvater on the way to the bathroom.
That's hilarious.
So I got my pictures, but also they might have been like felt a little affronted. I try to keep that from happening now when I meet authors. I'm like, okay, like be cool. Don't make them think you're a stalker.
Now one day you'll be on a panel with them and they'll be like, do you remember that time? That would be so funny. Yeah. So funny. Well, I'm trying to think, I couldn't really think of any funny panel. I'm sure I have funny panel stories, but I couldn't think of one yet. So, or like funny, like meeting other author stories. But I do have a lot of, I have some event stories, like a lot of book signing funny stories. So one of them, I can't remember where I was, but I'm thinking I was at the Barnes & Noble in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And I was signing and I think, I think it was the day that I was with a fellow author and we were both at the table signing and it was like really dead. And then this older woman came up to me and she was so sweet. And she asked if I could help her find Danielle Steele's latest novel because she thought I just worked at the Barnes & Noble and I was just sitting at this table. So I was like, sure. And I had never been to this store before because it's like not in my town. But I just found it like right away. And I was like, yeah, here's the new Danielle Steele. And I never told her that I didn't work there. Like we just went through this whole thing. So that was really funny. There's lots of funny stories about doing those signings when it's like super dead. It's just crickets and yeah, but that's a little, I will say like a lot of the time what happens is that the people who come up to you, even if they've been talking to you for a while, like about the book, they'll come this point in the conversation where they suddenly realize that you wrote it and like they previously didn't know that, even though you've been talking to them this whole time. So I just think it's so funny. Like even if there's a sign with your face on it and your name like behind the table, like it doesn't, like there's some kind of disconnect where people don't know that you're the one who wrote the book. I've had that like so many times. So yeah, that's a funny one. Scarlett, do you have any funny stories that you want to share?
I have to admit that I haven't thought about this very much. I don't know. I mean, because the only thing I'm thinking of is the most recent in my catalog of experiences. And I think it's funny to watch people freak out about you. I think about how you stepped in front of Sarah Dessa and Alysha, and I'm like, I just watched people freak out about my existence, and it is really weird, but really sweet all at the same time. I don't know. All I think of is like the things that were embarrassing were like when you first start out as an author, you know, and you're querying when you're not ready, or I don't know, you don't know what you're doing and you write the worst like query letters. And I think sometimes I think back to that and how easy it is now. Like it's so easy for me to write like a query or like a blurb for a book and how hard it used to be. And I think that's sort of a reflection of you as an author. Like you probably get better at writing, so your query letters get more concise. So I just think those things are embarrassing. But I can't pinpoint at this point like anything in particular that was really weird, but I'm not very helpful on this topic. Ashley's in the comments. She gets to see me, and I have a signing coming up at Barnes & Noble on the 26th, and she's coming up from Texas, so she's saying that she's going to freak out when she sees me.
What time is your signing?
It's going to be from 2 to 4.
And which Barnes & Noble?
Yeah, tell people
the one in Norman.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought I said that.
I'm going to try to get down there.
I just found out about it, so
I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe you'll have
on my
new
calendar
story after that.
I'll come and freak out with Ashley and
the
other Ashley. Yeah, for Norman. I'm writing it down.
Yay. Oh yeah, I have a lot of embarrassing like signing stories.
Because you put yourself out there.
Of course. Well, I have. So the very first one I did, which was at a Barnes & Noble here in Oklahoma City.
I went to that one.
Yeah, so we got there late. Like one of my friends came to help me set up, and I thought it was totally cool to like drag my life-size like human skeleton like down there. I mean, it's like not real human skeleton, but like it's like super hot out. There was tons of traffic, so we're super late. We get there. I've been planning this for weeks with like the event coordinator. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to have it all set up. We have this whole big space. Like, it's going to be amazing. So I'm super late, dragging the skeleton and a bunch of food. Like, I brought food to this thing in there. And I go to the person and they're like, oh yeah, the events coordinator isn't here today. And I'm like, what? I'm like, that's fine. But did they set it up? They're like, no. And so nothing has been set up. Like nobody knew this is happening, even though we've been planning it. And the day before she was like, yeah, it's going to be all ready. And so like frantically we're like moving tables, and the people who worked there were really nice. And they were like, yeah, we're going to do everything. So they're moving this huge, like thick wooden table that's covered in those like fancy leather bound classics, you know? And as they're moving it, the two front legs break off and hundreds of books come spilling forward, like onto the floor. And this is like 5 or 10 minutes before we're supposed to start, you know? And it was just like such a mess. So finally they end up like cobbling together some chairs and like clearing out this area. And it was fine, but it was just like, it was so funny. They like
I remember that story.
Trying to get it together. Yes. Oh gosh. Anyway, so yeah, that was an interesting one. I can't think if I've had any other like signing ones apart from kind of the awkward. Like I once did one in a Barnes and Noble that was like a local author signing. So, and they had it in the little nook area, which in this Barnes & Noble was walled off from like the rest of the store. So they had us in this round little area walled off from everyone else where nobody could see us. And like, so obviously like nobody came back there. And I was next to my friend Tammy Sauer, who's like a huge like picture book author, and nobody came to talk to us. It's just like, you know, people walk by like, hello, no, they're just walking by. And finally we each sold like one book to someone we know who had already bought our books before. And it was just like a total pity buy. I was like, wow.
A pity buy.
Oh yeah, that happened. Like, especially when they put you in a place where nobody can find you, and nobody knows you're going to be there. It's just like, wow, those are so funny. But yes. Did y'all think of any other embarrassing stories? Because I have a whole list. I have a whole list. Well, speaking of, so the only time that, since I write for middle grade, the only time that people think I'm like cool and famous is when I do school visits, right? So when you go there, they think you're like a famous author. And you get lots of funny questions, a lot of questions about like, are you rich? Are you a millionaire? Do you know Dave Pilkey or like some famous, you know, do you know some famous author? Do you know R.L. Stine? Or I'll get like, do you know like some celebrity that's not even related to writing? Just all like any sort of, you know, personal question that you can think of will be asked. But then like one time, I had the kids will line up like after each session and I'll sign the books that were purchased. And so that's fun. But then this one time I had kids line up and like they couldn't afford a book. And so they wanted me to sign paper. So I'm like, great, I'll sign a piece of paper. But this one kid was like really insistent that he wanted me to sign his face in Sharpie. And I was like, I don't think your teacher would be very happy if I signed your face in Sharpie. I like can't remember, but I'm pretty sure I ended up like signing his arm in Sharpie because I was like, this will be a compromise. Like, at least it's not like right across your forehead. It's just on your arm. So that will be fine.
I don't think I could write for middle grade students because of this. Like, remember
this is what I'm excited for. No, I want to meet the weird kids. I want to talk to them.
It is fun. Yeah, you get, and it's fun to see like who really loves your stories, like who your biggest fans are and stuff. And yeah, I get like cute fan mail and weird messages too. Like after one, I can't remember what it was. Yeah, but somebody like went onto my Facebook or onto my website and was like sending me this really strange message. I was like, okay, what 12-year-old is this?
Oh no.
It wasn't anything like scandalous, but it was just strange.
I'm sure Scarlett gets scandalous messages.
I'm sure, yes.
I don't really. You would think, but no,
I get scandalous messages on Instagram, and I'm like, how did you find me?
I haven't managed that yet, but No, I can't. Anytime working at the library, I'll never forget this kid came up and he asked me for a hug, and I said no, thank you. and because I didn't work in the children's department, I was over adult and teen services, and so I wasn't used to kids and the things that they would ask. And I remember telling a coworker that, and I said, "What would you have done?" She's like, "Give him a hug." So I'd be totally terrible at being a children's book author, but no, I haven't yet received any weird messages, but I did get this really odd person at my signing who wanted me to ghost write for them, and I was like, I need you to get out of my line, basically. It was really awkward.
Yeah, that is a funny one, because I think you always get, well, there's a couple of things you always get when someone finds out that you're a writer. Like, first of all, everyone, if they just had a little bit of free time, they'd do a novel too, obviously. How hard can it be? Like, there's that.
Yeah. I write books. I could write a book.
Yeah. Or everyone
I have an idea for a book.
You know, yeah, like, it is awkward because you want to be nice, but then it's like, I guess they don't realize like how much effort would go into reading someone's entire manuscript and giving them notes on it, and you're going to ask a complete stranger like if they want to do this. Like, that's awkward. I just refer people to like join a critique group or join various whatever organization and whatnot, you know, because but yeah, that's kind of awkward.
The most recent awkward one I had was also like really sweet. It was an older gentleman who found out that I write, and he was really enthusiastic, and he was like, "That's great. That's amazing that you write books. Have you thought about getting them published?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm in the process of trying to get something published." And he's like, oh, "Okay, so like how far along are you? Are you going to get it published?" And I was like, "Well, like I'm trying." And at the time I was like, how much information does this man want? Because I can explain the whole thing. But he was very encouraging. It was just like, he thought he needed to encourage me to keep going. And so I was like, "Oh, thank you."
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually people are really nice. I mean, sometimes you get the awkward like people like asking you out or something, or you know.
Well, that's what I would assume Scarlett would be like, I don't know.
What?
It happens.
Those kinds of dirty messages.
I don't get those. I don't know.
That's good. I got like a comment on my last post from some rando person saying like, "You look like you just drank honey," and then messaged me and was like, "Hi, you read books.
Oh no.
What are you wearing?"
The only time that happened was I went live with the Bookish Box, and the Bookish Box has a ton of trolls somehow in their like when they go live, and then I had to block like 100 trolls.
Wow.
From my Instagram after that. And I was like, because we were trying to report them in the comments as we were going live, but it didn't work. But
yeah.
No, I don't really have. I think I've had one kind of weird message, but also
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Great.
But I guess I have to remind you that I don't always I'm not the only person who's in my social media. I do have an assistant.
Right,
that might be why.
Right.
But so maybe that
they're doing a great job.
Yeah, they're doing a great job. But I think the most awkward things that I've had is that like I will be at an event and people think that because I'm self-published, I'm automatically not well known. And I'm the most popular author usually on some of the panels I've been on, and so I just think it's really awkward to sort of navigate that, because they'll be like, "Oh, how are you published?" And I'll be like, "Well, I'm self-published," and they'll be like, "Oh," and I'll be like, "No, yeah, well, we can compare a lot of things if you would like," but that's probably the most awkward thing I've experienced so far.
Yeah, that would be awkward.
I've gone to I've gone to so many events, and now that I work at a bookstore, I go to all the events. So it's like all like the gamut, the whole gamut, like picture books through adult. And yeah, I think the best question I ever heard was from a kid. This is why I want to do Kid Lit, because he was like raising his hand from the start. Like he had a question, and the author was like, I'll answer questions in a minute. Let me like talk a little bit about the book. And he held his hand up the whole time. He was so nice. He was quiet, but he was just like, I am ready. And so finally he gets called on, and he like stands up, and yeah, I don't know. He must have been like 10, maybe 11. And he goes like, do you know how to play baseball? And the book's not about baseball. It was like zombies.
Yeah.
Or something. And I was like,
this is like every virtual visit this is every visit I've ever had. Although sometimes like they'll be super prepared because the teacher will have them like prepare their questions ahead of time. But sometimes they're just off the cuff. And yeah, it's definitely like all those types of questions. And yeah, just so many funny ones. I've had a lot of, I should keep a list of like all the funny questions I've had on like virtual visits. But this one time I had a really funny, so I was doing a virtual visit and the teacher like had never used Skype or something. And so they wanted to do a test. And so we set up a time to test it. They didn't show up. I was like, okay. So I got in the shower and I was like, let me take a shower. And then while I'm in the shower, I hear the Skype thing ringing. And I'm like, okay, it's just the teacher like in her planning period, and she wants to just test it to make sure it works. So I like get out of the shower, like in my towel, and I didn't really think this through. So I'm like in my towel and I flip on the Skype thing. No, she's decided to test it in front of her entire class. The entire class is there, and I'm like, oh, hey, I guess this works. Bye. So one of her entire classes saw me just like in my towel, like my hair wet. And
Kim, this should have been your very first story. First of all, a whole classroom saw you in your towel.
Yeah, I did that. And this one time I had this really adorable class in Morocco, and they were like older. It was like a college class, but they were so excited, and they were like taking pictures the whole time and like doing all of this. And then they like surprised me in the end. We're like posing for group pictures. Like I'm on the screen, you know, and they have the principal of the whole school comes in, and he tries to like talk to me in French, and like, yes, I majored in French, but I have big like anxiety about talking in foreign languages. Like I can read a French book, fine, but like, so they put me on the spot. I had to like muddle through some French like during the Skype with their school principal, and I'm sure it was embarrassing, but anyway.
That is terrifying. Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I will read something in German and feel like fine doing that, but you tell me to say something or respond in German, and it's like I can't remember anything. I'm just like,
I know that's how I am with languages. But yeah. So anyway, yeah, lots of funny Skype ones. I was thinking when we were talking about getting like strange messages and stuff, which I totally do. But I went to this sort of nerd camp in Washington one time. So I like fly out there, and it's this all day event. And so I'm taking Ubers everywhere, back and forth. Well, I take the first Uber, and it's this like very outgoing, like older gentleman who's like singing along to everything. And I'm like, yeah, this guy is amazing. How fun is this? And he's telling me these jokes. And I'm like, yeah, it's hilarious, you know? And he's like, oh, let me play you this time I was on the radio. And so he has this recording of when he was on the radio. And so we're listening to that. Okay, it's fine. Then the next time I need an Uber, like the next day or something, it's him again. Like it just happens to be him again. And now it's getting like more detailed about like his personal life. And I'm like, but I'm like, this is great. This is super adorable. it's a fun. Okay. So all that's fine. And then he's like, hey, can we be like Facebook friends? I'm like, okay, this guy is like an elderly man. Like, he's not going to be like creeping on me. Like, sure, we can be Facebook friends. And then after I get back, like, he legit like proposes marriage to me. And he wants me to just watch every video that he's ever made of himself, like singing stuff. And I just eventually, I just had to like, let him down easily. I was like, wow, he read a lot into the fact that I was like, laughing at his jokes and stuff.
Oh,
and
no.
Like, I know. I'm like, so anyway, that was funny. But yes, sometimes that will happen. People just read a little too much into interactions, I think. But but you all are just starting out on your like public events. I'm sure you'll have a lot more stories that come along.
I hope not. Not like that. I'll take a rain check on all of those stories. Thank you.
Yeah,
you'll have a lot more.
I'll be careful to never be in my towel near my computer.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny.
You just walk into weird situations.
I don't.
Like you just they find you. It's like, it's a thing.
There was one time, like at an SCBWI meeting, this person came in and sat down. I was like, you have a really pretty voice. Has anybody ever told you that? And I'm like, no. And so, yeah, it was the same thing. Like, then they're like, they found me on Facebook and they're like asking me on Facebook. And I'm like, why? And they had wandered into the wrong meeting. They weren't even going to the SCWI meeting, but they sat there for the first like 10 minutes just for the purpose of like, I don't know, talking to her. I was like, no.
I have gone to SCBWI meetings and like gotten there early and sat down in like, because the chairs are like in a circle. Yeah. And I've had like people in the past, I've had people like come up and sit down and then be like, so what's this all for? And I explain like SCBWI and they're like, oh. And then they just sit there for like a few more minutes and I'm like, are they gonna stay? Are they like secretly writers or
I don't know.
Secretly writers.
I have to keep talking to them?
I don't know. Anyway, it was just awkward, but yeah. Oh, I know another thing that happens a lot when I'm doing the virtual visits, of course, is that I get questions from students that I don't know the answers to because kids want to know every little minute detail about the story. And like
that's
by the
not
time
just kids.
I was like, that's readers.
That is a reader thing.
Okay. Yeah. And so it's like by the time it comes out, for me, it's like years after I wrote it and I've forgotten everything about it. And so they'll ask me, something like, especially because, the parents are just minor characters in my story. So they'll be like, what were the parents' names? How did they die? Like in this one story where it was just like a really minor point, like how, what was this thing? And I'm like, it's so awkward when you're chatting with the book club and you're like, let me get back to you on that because, I really don't remember exactly, what all this was. So, yeah.
I sometimes I get asked a question and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't think this through enough. And then when I do come up with the answer, I'm like, oh, you're brilliant. I was asked, my favorite though is something I actually use now on my Instagram, which is there's a part in my book where Hermes talks about or mentions his top 5 fantasies. And then I had to think about those and now I use it as like a marketing thing on my Instagram. But I was so glad that someone asked that because it's hilarious. And so you get the fun ones, but then you get the ones when you're like, oh God. I want to know how you have time to think about it, right? Like that's like how. But I do appreciate those. But yeah, I go through those moments where I'm like, I don't know the answer to this.
Yeah. That's when I realized I'm like, I don't think I ever named that adult character. That's why I don't know their name or stuff like that, you know?
I used to be like so detailed in that world building and stuff, and now I'm just like, I
Need to know
am,
basis.
but yeah, it was
need
just
to know.
different. It's like, it's like, oh, and sometimes I'm like, maybe if I don't go into detail, I can be more flexible with it later, and like if it's a series and stuff. So I don't know, but yeah, it's definitely a reader thing.
Yeah, that's really funny. Does anybody have any funny like critique group stories or things?
Oh,
like
I do. Well, I don't know if this is really that funny. Maybe you just have to like be there.
I have awkward ones.
Yeah, that counts.
I had given my critique partners like a first draft of a chapter of this like sci-fi, this YA sci-fi that I was really proud of. And my critique partner let her like teenage daughter read it because that's like the audience. And I forgot to tell them that like in first drafts and sometimes even in second drafts, if I don't have like a name for something or someone, I put in a thing that I can just type in and it will bring me all the pages that have that. Some people use like numbers, like the number like 1111, or I use XXX. And so it looked like this one sentence looked like they were going into an XXX area of the ship, of the spaceship. And to get into it, you had to press a button. But instead, the sentence wrote, and to get into XXX, she slapped the bottom. And my critique partner came to me and she was like, so this is YA? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh, but you have her like slapping a bottom to get into like a area. And I was like, what? No. So then that was like the running joke for that entire project.
Oh my gosh. I can imagine you being so confused when she said that. You're like, what are you doing?
What about this?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
There was no bottom slapping until possibly this.
Darn.
Yeah, until now. Now
Now you will have flat. Now you will have spanking.
Well, a better word, yes.
Yes.
What about you, Kim? Funny critique partners?
I'm trying to think. I do have one kind of funny story. I'm trying to remember exactly how it happened, but like basically I brought like the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators used to do these critique days where like everybody would go to someone's house and the whole day you're like critiquing stuff and you're in this little group. So I had
a long time to critique.
Yeah, I know.
But it was always so fun. I loved it.
It was fun. And so I brought the first chapter of Skeleton Tree, my first book, and I'm pretty sure that at that time I knew that I had already sold the book like at auction. And it was like
sneaky.
At the time, it was like a big deal. I think it was, I'm pretty sure. And so I put the first chapter and I just remember this one person being like, well, it was so boring and I just can't see any kids wanting to read this and just like blah, blah, blah. And
ouch. Are you saying that in a critique group? Like, I feel like you're not.
To that effect. And I was just like, thank you. But it was just so funny because like I had already sold it.
They probably wrote horrible stories. That's where my brain goes. I'm like, you're probably a terrible.
No, I'm sure you're good. I mean, it's just like when you're critiquing, you want to find something wrong with it or something. And so you find it, but it's just like, it was just so hilarious. It just puts it all in perspective because you're like, yeah.
Not everyone is going to like every book. But also you're right. Like when you're critiquing, especially in those settings, I feel like there's pressure to find something to give feedback on.
Yeah,
So whenever I go into those groups, I'm like, if I see something, I'll say something. If not, like, I'll tell you that I didn't personally see anything. So I don't want to just critique something for the sake of like having pointed something out.
Yeah.
I could never find anything wrong in Kim's books.
I
like them all.
Please.
I did. It's true.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's so funny. You definitely learn to take it with a grain of salt and then take the parts that are useful to you in those situations. But yeah,
I had gotten like a query critique from an agent way back in the day. I think this was for the second book that I wrote that I was about to query, and I like won a query critique from this agent at a pretty big agency. And I remember her sending me her feedback. The very first thing she said was, "This is definitely something I would never represent. So here's my feedback on what you should do for your query." Like there was nothing like positive to the point where I was like, is this just like a horrible book?
Did she explain like why she would never? I mean, what she just dropped that like
that's like the thing that has stuck out to me. I don't even remember what the feedback was. It was just, this is something I would never. And so I thought, because of course I'm thinking about that line for like years, but I eventually was like, well, maybe she was just saying that because she's done these giveaways and people probably turn around and try to pitch it to her. So maybe she was just trying to like stop that before we waste.
Or maybe she was trying to tell you to take her feedback with a grain of salt because she would never represent it.
Oh, I never thought of it that way.
I bet that's it. Yeah,
that's a nicer way to think about it.
Rep that genre or whatever. Yeah,
that's probably not how I would have taken it, but that's how, as a friend, I would have told someone else to take it.
Yeah.
So there's that. But I feel like she probably was just like, hey, like I don't represent this, but I take my feedback.
Total sense.
Yeah.
But at the time I was like, oh, is it that bad?
No, clearly not. I mean, you have an agent now, so
I do. I will probably never show her that book, though. I don't think I'll show anyone that book.
Well, it's all practice.
No, I did reread it recently because it's the one that I wrote during my MFA program. So I actually have like a bound copy of it.
Ooh.
So I read it. I read like the first chapter a couple months ago. I don't know. I was feeling nostalgic, so I was reading through a bunch of my old stuff to make myself feel better, like to see the skills that I have like built and how far I've come. And I read the first couple chapters, and I was like, you know what? It's not terrible. Like, it's not great, but it's not as terrible as I thought it was.
I never want to revisit how terrible I was. Like, I don't know.
There were so many cliches, like the held breath, like a breath that I didn't know I was holding, and like so many lines about the character's eyes and
okay, but to be fair,
but not in a nice, like not in a good way, not in a well done way. It was just like their eyes were glistening and gleaming and so blue I fell into their depths, and then we walked past each other in the hallway. Like, oh. I see what you're trying to do, Alysha, but it didn't work. I still love a great eye description.
Oh, me too.
In books, but I was not doing it well back then.
We all learn.
We all learn.
Yeah. I still have a soft spot for some of my old books, even though there's no place for them. But like they are like especially so. It is kind of a funny story, just that this book existed, but like the first book I ever queried, which was not the first book I'd written, but it was like the first book I queried, was about this town that is taken over by these little mustachioed gentlemen who are about yay big. And they burrow inside children's chest cavities like alien, and they just live there and they control the child's minds and they tell them scary fairy tales to like keep them in line. And meanwhile, all of the adults are sent off to work in the mines to like mine precious metals for the little gentlemen. And there's a very memorable scene when the leader of this group is in his mansion and he's sitting in like this armchair facing a roaring fire and has this bowl of some kind of goo in his lap. And so we see him like fishing into the pink goo and then eating like human body parts that he has sliced off of his servants, like ears and eyeballs. And just, like,
this was for children, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was my first middle grade novel. And my my former agent was like, loved it. And so she's like, maybe it's a little too dark. Could you pare it down, or do you have something else? I ended up sending her Skeleton Tree, which was my first one. But yeah, it's hilarious because it was so gory, but it's also, it has a special place in my heart, that little story.
I feel like that story could get published, though.
Actually, that's not my problem with that story. My problem with that story is that the only character, which is not that this couldn't work, but the only character that has a real emotional journey is Quimby, the villain. Like, he really changes by the end of the story, but the two main kid characters are pretty flat. And so that's my main problem with the story. And the plot is pretty outlandish, as you can tell, but so it would need a lot of reworking on that respect to make it work, which is why it will never, probably.
But like maybe not for middle grade, but for like adult, like the way that there are so many adult stories, I feel, or like published stories put in the adult section for a good reason, that have like kids centered in it, but it's because it's so dark, or because the main character is the villain, or like, I feel like Neil Gaiman stuff, though not as dark, is like that. Where it's like it's for adults, but there are kids or teens in the Stardust, yeah. And oh my gosh, have you read Unfortunately the Milk? That is hilarious.
Oh no.
Well, that is a kid's novel.
But it's not, though, because kids won't get, like, the whole joke is
but it is sold in middle grade.
The adult stuff. Like, it's an adult, I don't know. I feel like it was written for parents, not for the kids.
But it's Neil Gaiman, so he can do that.
He can do whatever he wants. He basically could do whatever he wanted from the get-go, which I'm like, how do you become that?
I love it. Well, he had the whole Sandman
a lot of books,
which was like huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like tons of horror and epic fantasy have child main characters, but they're just not written for children.
Oh, like a lot of Stephen King stuff.
Like It, all those.
And Carrie.
Yeah, Carrie.
That's a teenager.
A Long Walk is all kids, basically. A lot of his have child main characters, but yeah, so just because you have a child does not mean your book is middle grade at all. But this one really was middle grade. It's just, it was dark. So, yes.
When you were describing it, I saw it as like a Tim Burton, like cartoony movie. I'm like, this is the Tim Burton darkness, and like the bowl of the mushrooms. Like, I could just like see it. Like, get in contact with Tim Burton. Make it happen.
I know. A lot of my stuff.
That's all it takes.
That's all it takes. Yeah.
Has that
just call him up. He's in the white pages.
Yeah, no worries. Totally make it happen. Oh boy. Well, I think we did most of my embarrassing stories. Oh, I do. Not really embarrassing, but it was funny that I always tell the story at school visits too, that I wrote my first book sitting in my dog's dog bed. And that is true because skeleton tree, I had just moved to this apartment and I didn't have like any place to sit, like a desk or anything like that. I had a couch, but it was like really uncomfortable. And so I couldn't type on a couch. It's like, so I sat on the floor in my dog's dog bed with my laptop like propped up. And over like 2 weeks, I wrote the first draft of that. And it was all in her dog bed. And the funny thing is that she was on the couch behind me, like peeking over my shoulder the whole time that I was writing it. So
there was a book I wrote. I don't know which number was one of them. I don't know which one. I don't know which one, but it was the time where I was living with two roommates in a 2-bedroom apartment. And so I would sit in the living room on the couch and write like all day Saturday into the night, but I would get so like focused on writing that when the sun went down, I wouldn't get up to turn on the lights. So I kept freaking out one of my roommates because he would like open his door and the whole living room and kitchen is like pitch black. And then I'm sitting there in the glowing computer light on the couch. And he's like, oh.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes. Creeping people
You're
out.
creepy.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Creepy.
I love it. Well, yeah. And I tried to involve my dog in like videos and stuff early on too. And I remember like I had to shoot this video for my first book for Scholastic to do in their fall previews for like schools. And I had this epic scene. Like I took so many takes to get a scene at the end where I high five my dog because she's sitting next to me. And then at the very end, I'm like, high five. And she does it. And they cut out the high five.
They cut it out?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was like slightly too long. And I was just like, seriously, like you should have cut something else out because that was the best part of this whole video.
I remember that.
Man, why? So that was funny though.
Not fair.
Not fair. Exactly. It's so unfair. Well, I feel like we got a lot of embarrassing and funny moments. I've been trying to like rack my brain and I'm sure there are a lot of other ones that I'll remember later. But
yeah. When we're done with this, I'll be like, oh man, that one. I could have said that one.
I know. Yeah, but that's all I can remember for now.
And I will
Scarlett, did you think of
being like, no.
Last minute funny stories? Okay, well, you'll have to come back.
I have creepy ones from the library, like not from writing.
Oh yeah, the library. I have a lot of library stories.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a library story?
Embarrassing or creepy?
Whichever you prefer.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe embarrassing.
The only thing I can think about today, like the only one I can think about now is that like 50-year-old who wanted to get into a fight with 2 teenage boys. And I was like, they walked out. I don't know what was, so the boys were just eating in the quiet space. They were eating chips and this old man got mad and he's like 52 and he was like, let's go outside to these 2 teenage boys. And so they went across the street into the church parking lot to fight. And I called the police.
Did they actually fight? Like,
I don't think so, but it was just really bizarre. And I was like, why? But yeah, it was weird. I don't know. You get weird. You get a lot of odd things at the library. A lot of odd people also fixate on you. So,
oh yeah.
But
I had a lot of.
Whenever I go into the library, I don't know. I try to be like stealthy. I don't know why? But I'm like, I don't want to borrow. I don't want to like. I don't.
You don't want anyone to ask you questions.
Yeah, I don't want anyone to, but I also don't want to like bother the librarians or any of the aides behind the desk. So I'm just like, I like creep in. I'm like, it's okay. I'll find what I need.
I'm like that when I go to like shopping or something too. I'm like, don't look at me. I'm not here. Yeah. Like, let me just shop. Oh yeah.
My favorite thing was helping people to find books. And that's what I still do. I still do that on my Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love helping people find books.
Yeah.
It
I
is.
don't know any other embarrassing things. I probably have a lot, but I just don't. I just probably suppressed them, like, so I could forget it ever happened. And
Yeah.
Yes. I had like the most embarrassing for me was that several times I had dads who would come in, like single dads, to the children's section and ask me out.
Oh.
And sometimes it would be okay because they would like wait till their kid was like outside and just like bring me a note or something. Like that happened one time. But sometimes they would do it like right in front of their kid. And like, what am I supposed to say now? No. And this one like would keep, this one got really weird. And like, if I was in the meeting room, like doing a meeting, he would stand at the glass, like staring in at me. And he would try to just come when I was there. And he would just want to show me like all of these pictures like of his kids like on his phone just like for a really long time. I was just like, oh wow, it was really awkward because you have to be there and you have to be nice and they know that, and so there's like really nothing you could do except for
you can
go
say
into that for a while.
No way.
Yeah,
this is inappropriate. I never got asked out.
It's awkward.
Great. Never once. I'm so
glad.
glad.
I knew when I worked at a liquor store.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, there's something about the library.
Something about the library.
Yes. Anyway, but yes, I could go on too long about library stories, but this was fun. It was fun to hear everybody's funny stories.
Yes.
My lack thereof.
Well, you'll have some. Just wait for it.
Quit saying it, Kim. That's not what I want out of my life.
You need to have this funny story so you have something to tell at parties, right? So
it's enough to tell people like, yeah, I'm an author.
I feel like you guys always talk about your writing retreat funny stories. Like you should have told some of those.
Have a funny story from that.
I remember Kim.
You remember? Okay, so at the writing retreat, I didn't have a bathing suit, so we got into the hot tub, and I was in my bra and like shorts or something. I don't know what I was wearing.
Yeah.
But I had like my bra, and so I'm in the hot tub, and I brought my dog, who was like very skittish, and she's afraid of everything, but she was doing okay, and she was sitting like on this bench like by the hot tub, and I don't remember what it was that scared her. I think it was the jets, like someone turned up the jets or something. It made a whoosh, and she got so scared that she leaped over this thing onto the other side, and she's like running around the cabin. It's like the middle of the night, or it was like dark, and so I, in like bare feet in my bra, I like leap over after her, and it's cold. It was like winter, and I'm like running through the woods like after my dog. Thankfully, she did not go far, so she just came right back. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is a story. If anybody saw me,
I think because I was sitting near her, and I think something I had but near me fell, and that dog took off. But so did Kim. It was like I think the funniest thing about our writing retreats was that we had a coworker who also went with us. And when you saw him in a different light, it was hilarious because he was like he was really competitive and he loved games. And it was, I don't know, I just loved watching him be competitive and kind of like cheating. Like,
I don't even remember him being super competitive. That's so funny. Did he cheat in games?
He kept trying to bargain his way. Like, it was just really funny to me. But I mean, how many we went into that one cabin where Lisa was watching the whole time. The bunker.
There's a bunker.
And Kim did not want to go into the bunker.
I want to go in. It was so
It's how people get murdered, Scarlett.
Don't you watch TV? And because I thought she was watching, and she was gonna be like, "How dare you go into my private bunker?"
We did think that Lisa was watching, so we talked to her a lot. And I still remember her name. But Kim used the bunker idea for a story later. So
That's
she
now
thought it was
never
kind
going to
of
go
cool.
anywhere. I did, but that's probably never going to go anywhere now. But yes, maybe I'll use a bunker again for another story.
We had fun.
Yeah.
I like to go on writing retreats because it helps me actually be productive. So
we should do a writing retreat.
Yeah. We need to have wine.
Yes. Oh, my dog peed on a chair one time at a writing. Do you remember?
Yeah, and I sat in it.
No, you didn't sit in it.
I did. That's how we found out she peed in the chair.
No, because I took it off right away. You couldn't have sat in it.
Nuh-uh, that's how we found out that she peed in it, because I sat down and you were like, oh, she peed.
Really? I don't remember you sitting down.
Yep.
I just remember like she like, as soon as she came in, she like jumped onto the chair, and maybe I didn't realize it at first, but yeah, she peed because she was so scared. So now I have a waterproof blanket, and so when I take her places, I put that on the bed, but she'll never pee unless someone else is there, because it's like, but when someone like, if someone peeks in the room, she'll pee as well because she's so scared.
Yeah, Kim keeps her dog like locked away in a room when we're on a writing retreat.
She won't come out. I mean, I could try to make her come out, but she won't come out. So there's no, except to walk outside, but she's very skittish, but she's super cute. She actually got scared today. Like, she hasn't gotten scared outside in probably years like this, but I try to, there were like workers everywhere, so she won't go near where the people are, and I'm trying to throw away her poop because I like have her poop in a little bag, and so there's like a dumpster, and I know that she won't go in the dumpster because she won't go in anywhere that looks like a little doorway and there's like a little gate around it, and I just know she won't go in it, but I still try. I was like, maybe she'll do it this time, it's been so long. No, she was like, she got that thing where she's like cowering, she won't move, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna have to carry her, but no. Then she recovered, but I just had to like hurl it because I couldn't go near the dumpster because she wouldn't do it. So I had to hurl it, but she's fine. Anyway, that's the funny dog story for tonight. So
I love dog stories.
Yes, I do have a lot of funny dog stories, but we'll save those for another time.
A whole episode.
A whole episode.
You, Kim, Scarlett, and Ginny all have dogs, so you guys would have dog stories. I've had dogs in my life. I just don't have one in my house currently. But I can totally be here for dog stories.
Yeah, dog stories. Awesome. Well, and if anyone does have an idea for more episodes, let us know. And thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. I'll just wave goodbye with Jerry as usual. Bye, everyone.